Welcome to the Curriculum and Policy Committee. My name is Nyla Biliu. I am the chair of this committee and I'm an at-large board member. Let's go around and do some introductions because I just think it's good to introduce folks at every meeting. Sarah, can you start, please? Sarah Warren. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Sarah Warren, Senior Executive Director for Strategy. And I'll pass to Vice Chair Bondo.
I am sorry, I have a bad cold, so bear with me. I am Iki Bondo, School Board District 1 rep and a member of the Curriculum and Policy Committee. My brain is just not working today. So thank you.
That's okay. I'll pass it along for you. How about you, Dr. Ahmed?
Thank you, Ms. Bill. My name is Abdullahi Ahmed, and I am the Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Schools. And I will pass to Dr. Atkins Duina.
Good evening. I am Angela Atkinson Duina, the Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Schools, and I will pass to Allison.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Allison Dame. I'm the Director of Secondary Academics and apologize for being late, and I don't know who hasn't spoken yet.
I'll go. Jessie Robinson. I'm the Director of Elementary Academics. Is that everyone?
I think I might be the last one. Sarah Lentz, pronouns are she, hers. No, that's fine. Chair of the board and at-large member.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, I'm gonna take this time to open public comment and see if we have anyone that wants to give public comment. There's no attendees, so I'm gonna assume there's nobody to give public comment. So I'm gonna close public comment and get back to our agenda. Sarah Warren, could you introduce our agenda and run us through it, please?
Sure. Today we have updates on Strategic Initiative 2.1 and Strategic Initiative 2.2, which are our initiatives focused on English language arts and literacy for elementary and secondary, respectively. So is elementary going first?
We're doing it together, and then there's where we kind of break out. Yeah.
Okay, then I hand it over to all of you. Thank you.
Great. Angela, I'm not sure I can present. Can you present?
Sure.
Maybe I'm wrong. But...
you may have to give me a little bit of time to find the...
Somebody just made me the co-host, so that might have... Oh, you are the co-host.
Okay.
There we go. Awesome. Well, we're really excited to be here with you all to give you an update on where we are with these this initiative. I think we've already done welcomes and introductions, so thanks for leading that. So our outcomes for today is we wanted to kind of follow up on the meeting we had, I believe it was September, where we sort of launched this initiative with all of you, and to remind you of the why of adopting high quality instructional materials and kind of the connection to the strategic plan. We also would like to share a little bit about implementation research, just as like a framing for the where we are and where we think we're going. And then also to update you on where we are sort of current state. and then we'll share our plans around next steps and provide an opportunity for you to ask questions. So like I said, here's just a quick overview of the agenda and what we'll be doing today. All right, so here's just a little reminder about where we are in the implementation plan. So as you can see, what is in pink is what's launching this year. So this is the only initiative that's in the launch phase. And I don't know if you can read that. It's pretty small print, but we are supporting the use of high quality instructional materials that provide students with consistent access to grade level tasks and foster high levels of cognitive engagement by building deep knowledge of the adopted curricula, growing capacity to use aligned assessments to inform instruction, and building systems to respond to student needs. Then the next slide kind of shows, you go to the next slide. Oh yeah. How we're going to measure this. So these are our mission measures that really are aligned to this implementation. So just another reminder, we're really focused on English language arts outcomes, outcomes for multilingual learners through access, and specifically early childhood literacy through our M-Class assessment for grade 2. And then on the next slide is a reminder that we're also really paying attention to disaggregated groups, so students with IEPs and MLs and students who are economically disadvantaged. And then this final slide is also a reminder that we're focused on literacy this year, but that doesn't mean that's, that we're only going to be focused on literacy forever. We're going to move on to math after this, and then to social studies and science after that. And also just a reminder that even though we're focused on literacy, doesn't mean that those other subjects aren't being taught, obviously. Okay, so we're gonna talk a little bit about like what is our plan for ELA implementation this year, and I'm gonna turn things over to Allison.
All right, thanks, Jessie. So first off, again, these are reminders, so I'll move somewhat briskly, but we are working as we adopt our ELA curriculum on CKLA, which is more of a foundational literacy class with the really direct instruction in phonics, etc. In grades K2, and then EL in grades K8. And that's the expeditionary learning curriculum that comes from that organization. And then this is pulled from a Missouri DOE resource, but it's consistent with what we've read and know, and also our own experience in that there are phases of implementation of high quality instructional materials. So we can talk through this more granularly, but different schools are in different places in terms of how long they've seen the high quality instructional materials. But we know to expect that we're going to need to build systems, first of all, to support implementation. Then we try to do it with high fidelity to get used to it. And then we begin to adapt once we have a deep understanding of the curriculum and the purpose of it. And then we pay attention to the structures that will help sustain it. So each of these sort of seasons has different needs in terms of our leadership. So at all of our schools, we have resourced in advance certain supports to support that implementation phase. So an instructional coach is in every school, and Jessie and I meet with those coaches regularly, weekly, but we also bring them together for PD that's responsive to the needs that we're seeing monthly. We met with principals and coaches to do professional learning over the summer so that they were prepared to lead. We've worked with principals to open up teacher collaboration time for planning. And these are dense curricula, so it is really needed to have that time to internalize and plan around them. And then our goal, which we are meeting, is that every teacher is at least having 1 to 2 observations a month with informal feedback. And then in those collaborative meetings, really making sure that teachers have data they can use to inform their instruction. Here's another look at the way we know that supports are needed. So it's not just you drop in the high quality instruction materials and hope for the best, obviously. So you'll hear people, once we've adopted the high quality instructional materials, again, how we're going to use that teacher collaboration time is for internalizing so that teachers are unpacking together and learning from each other, preparing to teach them well. Of course, then they teach it. And then as they're teaching it, we're using informal walkthroughs by ourselves, the principals and the coaches, and sometimes intervisitations to coach and provide informal feedback. Again, the collaborative teams, the other purpose of their time together is to use data, and we expect to need these structures in an ongoing way to make this work. And then at one level up from that, Dr. Scallon meets with Jesse and I once a month to review progress toward goals. And we also engage, we are on the sites with members of our teams 3 times a year to do district walkthroughs. Sometimes with the support of our attuned consultants. And then we're offering very specific feedback for the schools about what their next steps need to be. Principals are also engaging in data step backs 3 times a year to look at their own schools' progress toward these goals. And we, as district leaders, are also doing our own data step backs to think about how we're doing across the schools and what our next steps need to be.
So we're going to share with you a little bit about what we see in our initial data. So as Allison mentioned, can you just go up one slide? I'm not quite ready to share the data yet. As Allison mentioned, we have these 3 walkthroughs in the year, and then a step back. So we're at the end of our first cycle, if that makes sense. So we have beginning of year, middle of year, end of year. And we did this walkthrough. We collected data from, I think, over 100 classrooms, and we're going to share out kind of what we saw from that data, and then what are our next steps based on what we noticed in that walkthrough data that we reflected on. Okay. So this next slide is from the elementary level. This is 2.1, and the status for 2.1 is on track, and you can see the data below. So just want to kind of make sure you understand a little bit about those different data points. The first one, percent of observations in which the adopted high quality instructional materials was in use, and so really happy to say that 100% of classrooms, when we walked in to do this, to observe the curriculum in place, every class was using either CKLA or EL. So that was really exciting. Percentage of classrooms where the teacher consistently adheres to the overall structure of the lesson plans. So this is what Allison was talking about in terms of that internalization. We were looking to see, like, were those planning meetings, did they play out in the instruction? And so you'll see, in 81% of classrooms, yes, we saw that internalization. Now, it was higher in CKLA than in EL. CKLA is a very explicit curriculum, and it's also, so it's a little bit easier to implement than EL. And also it was the priority that we focused on for elementary schools in this first part of the year. And so I think that's why you see a higher percentage there. And then for percentage of classrooms where nearly all students carry the cognitive load of the learning. So this is like pie in the sky. This is a hard thing to achieve. And this is something that you do over time. It's a skill that you learn. And about 48% of our classrooms, you could see all the students carrying the cognitive load. And so that is, in my mind, it was a great place to be at the beginning of the year, but obviously we have room to grow. And that's something that we're focusing on moving forward.
Okay, and now this is 2.2, so this is our EL work in our middle schools in 6 to 8, and the status of this is at risk for reasons I'll get into now. So we have two very similar measures. One is the percent of observations in which the adopted high-quality instructional materials are in use, and that was at 85%. So the vast majority of teachers are using the high-quality instructional materials, and obviously we work on action plans for classrooms where that's not the case. But similar to what Jesse was saying, in terms of adhering to the overall structure of the lesson plans, including the use of protocols, that was much lower. So what that meant was that the topic, the learning standard, the text, those things were indeed from the lesson, but they may be, if there were two activities, only doing one or adapting one. And that's often because teachers are worried about pacing, which is pretty common, but requires then some new learning and teaching and modeling and practice. So that's what we're moving toward. And then finally, the percent of classrooms where nearly all students engage in purposeful academic discussions. This is one of the protocols that the EL curriculum is going to emphasize. So we are sort of working with a hypothesis that if we can really support teachers in consistently adhering to the overall structure of the lesson plans, we will see the number of those academic discussions go up.
So this slide shows our next steps and how we're making adjustments based on the data. So we'll start with just saying that we really believe that the structures that we have put in place are the right ones and they're really high leverage. So planning intentionally with teachers, supporting them through instructional coaching, having that collaboration across grade levels, and then also providing that observation and feedback to teachers, as well as professional development based on those observations and the walkthrough. So we're going to keep going on those, knowing that over time, we really think that they'll play out with at both the elementary and the middle school level, some really, equitable outcomes for students. That being said, we know that we also need to adjust course along the way when we do these walkthroughs, right? Where it gives us a chance to reflect on our own practice and where our systems are at and how to adjust them. So for the elementary school, like I said, we focused on CKLA and we're kind of shifting towards EL because we see that as a real need. So we've learned from instructional coaches that pacing is a challenge for grades 2 through 5 in particular. So we've made a plan for each of those grade levels to sort of intentionally adjust the module that they're in so that kids get the most important learning and can move forward and not stay in the same module forever. So a joke that we have in the 5th grade, there's a book called Esperanza Rising, and we don't want Esperanza to always be rising. We want to finish that module and then move on. So anyway, that was what happened last year, that module went on and on and on and on. So that's one thing we're going to do. We're going also to kind of revise the protocol that we use with teachers, where they are, adjusting when they get together to look at the upcoming module or unit. They're being a little bit more intentional. We just adjusted that. And then we're also, like I said, shifting the focus from CKLA to EL, specifically in observation and feedback. So teachers will get more feedback on how they're implementing the EL curriculum, as well as more support during PD time.
Great. And moving on to the middle schools, we've made some adjustments. Can you go back one? Thanks. So we were going to have principals dropping into instructional coach monthly meetings. We're now having them attend the whole thing. We know our principals are busy and time away from the building can feel really costly, but we think it's really important because this initiative is at risk that the coaches and the principals are fully aligned on what needs to happen, and that the coaches have the full support of their principals, which sometimes just means that the principal has total awareness of what needs to happen next. And then we do have across our schools teachers who are ahead of their peers in terms of their comfort with the curriculum. I often hear the more they teach it, the more they come to trust it and like it. And so we've got these teachers that are a bit ahead in those ways at each school. So we're working on how to leverage that by creating like thinking partnerships, intervisitations, and even having teachers visit between schools so that we can seed those best practices across the building. So we're going to be back with you on February 12th, and we're excited because we will have both our middle of year implementation data, so we'll have done another round of walkthroughs, but we'll also have middle of the year achievement data, so we'll begin to be able to triangulate a little bit about where quality implementation, how that's impacting our actual student results. All right, now we're excited to take your questions.
Thank you for that presentation. I really enjoyed some of those outcomes. Mickey, go ahead. And I think I had a question after.
Thank you, Nana. I have 3 questions. I will go with the first for JC. I met a couple teachers from elementary school. They are really pleased with the CKLA. They are really like the materials. So I was so pleased to hear that. And then after just getting your explanation, the way you want to shift from the CKLA to EL, you don't think then it's too sooner, because what they've been requesting, to the opposite on what you're proposing, like, stay a little longer to be able to internalize the materials and also the impact of the students. And especially those requests came from teachers, ESOL teachers who feel like, we're changing curriculum so fast. But the one you just have now to different elementary schools is really well appreciated. So that's the question, and I want you to see why we have to go to sooner, because it just depends on each teacher. Some of them are a little faster, some of them they have to take a little time. So do you feel like is the time appropriate now to do that shift from the CKLA to the EL?
Great question. So it's definitely something we're kind of grappling with. I don't think we're going to abandon providing support around CKLA. So all teachers K through 2 are teaching both right now. So that they have 1 hour of CKLA and 1 hour of EL in their day. And so all of our focus has been on CKLA, doing the planning with them, doing the observation around that, doing the PD around that. And so I do think there are pockets of people that are feeling really confident with that. It sounds like the teacher that you talked to was feeling that way. And so it's not to say we're not going to keep focusing on that, but we're just going to move some of our time and attention on EL, because I don't know if you talked to anybody about EL, but people don't have the same sort of feelings. It's a very different curriculum. It's much harder to implement, and it just takes longer. And so people are really asking for more attention around EL. And so again, we're not going to just abandon CKLA, because I hear what you're saying, people need more time with it, and we're going to continue to do that, but just a little bit of a shift, I think. And I think for some people, like I said, it's what they're asking for.
All right. So what's the reason I say that, Jesse? Because being on the board for years, I see that we have invested a lot of curriculums, and then changing those curriculums. We are not changing. We're just moving. But some of them, they're gonna still have the CKLA, the CKLA.
Yeah, everybody's going to teach both for the rest of the year. Just my attention, what I'm paying attention to and what the instructional coaches are going to be supporting. But everybody's going to keep teaching CKLA and keep teaching EL.
Okay.
So sorry if that was unclear.
Okay, and I also just a reminder that CKLA is for K through 2. So the teachers that are doing both CKLA and EL are in that grade K through 2 band.
Okay. But that makes more sense to me because the K-2 is the most important for the language acquisition. So I think if we can master that area, and then when we move those students to more expeditionary learning, process with the EL is going to be really a great path because that transition will be much more skilled from the students. So we can see a real impact over there. So yeah, I really appreciate it, and I really thank you so much for the amazing work because I can hear myself. Those are positive feedback for elementary school. Kudos. And my second question is on the Dr. Allison. So I think you mentioned about the strategy 2.2, the measurement, the 60% of the student feedback. Do those feedback get do we get those feedback from teachers, or we also get feedback from students just to understand the level of engagement and to see how much they see the learning process happening through those new implementation and those new strategies?
Yeah, so if I hear you, you're asking when we collect our data on, for example, how often we're having academic discussions, are we asking students?
Yeah, because the 60% and the lowest one that I see on the on the measurement, I think it's the way we engaging students. I mean, those are student interaction in the classroom, if I understood well.
Yeah, so the way we get the data, just to say, is we use a consistent look for tool, and we just do many walkthroughs in order to see the trends in our classrooms. And as I said, like, the curriculum includes specific protocols for how to engage students in productive conversations. And the reasons that those may not happen are often because the teacher is worried about pacing and can feel like those are going to slow them down and they won't get to cover all the material. And we're trying to send a consistent message that it's, in fact, some of the most important learning they do is when they interact with one another and have discussions with one another. But I hear also you asking a little bit, might it be valuable to also get student perspective on these things? And I would agree with you there. I'm interested in that suggestion.
Okay, thank you so much. So I think it's going to help us a little bit to see if the pacing is faster or slow for the student, because if they're interested, you see them engaging and then involving to the learning process. So something I want to keep in mind. Thank you so much. For my last question, Nalat, sorry, I just want to get my last question. And I see we're still doing some professional development, helping teachers. So do you have any most challenging feedback that you have seen or heard from teachers who really help you, the team, to strategize and building some adjustment and different strategies around to build different professional development in the future?
Yeah, I can answer first and then throw to Jessie.
Yeah, go for it.
So one thing I've been struck by, I had already mentioned that the teachers who have really jumped in and tried it, by the time they get to year 2 or 3, then they're the most likely to come to me and say, okay, I'm starting to understand the logic of how these pieces fit together and how standards are covered. And so that has led us to use them as champions of the work, and also to say, you need to just jump in and try this. The other 2 pieces of feedback that I found pretty common are, it's almost equally likely that a teacher will be worried that the curriculum is too difficult, then that they'll tell me that there's not enough critical thinking, or it's too prescribed. So we are about to give Centerpoint data, Centerpoint assessment. We're underway in terms of our window, which is a assessment that's aligned to the assessment. And one way in which I want to use that to respond to that teacher feedback is to say, let's not, our opinions around this are only get us so far. Let's actually use some of our student data to talk about whether this is the right curriculum and whether what we're teaching is actually responding to the gaps in their understanding. So that data is literally coming in as we speak, and by next week and beyond, I'm working with coaches to do PD that's going to start to center that data.
Okay, great. But I like that. I like that critical thinking that they brought to those challenges, because that's exactly the skills to analyze some of those topics, so people can make a right judgment and a right decision. And I think it's so critical to see those data coming. So I like to see that. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
The elementary level, we've also heard that some kids can't access this, that they say like this is too hard for some of our kids. And so one of the Allison and I are collaborating on a PD in December that will get to some of this, some of what Allison talked about too, but thinking about there are lots of scaffolds in the curriculum already. So that's just like, if you don't know that term, it's thrown around in education sometimes. It's like a way to give, to not lower the standard, like keep it rigorous, but give kids sort of access points, or like a way to achieve the standard in like a different way, or with additional questioning or more time. And so part of what we'll be doing is helping teachers to see how those scaffolds are already in the curriculum. It's like a curriculum that's meant for kids that are coming to you with different levels of proficiency. And how do you give them access to the grade level proficiency? So, and then how do you have them carry the cognitive load? So that's another term that's like, how do you get them to do the thinking? And so again, it's not like a teacher up at the front of the room kind of telling kids what they need, but it's more like facilitating where kids are doing the thinking and talking to each other and solving problems and thinking about doing the critical thinking together. So I'm excited about that professional development. And I think it's really coming out of what we're hearing from teachers.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, it's perfectly fine. Thank you, team. Thank you. Thank you, Nala.
Thank you, Mickey. I just have one question and then Sarah can go. I'm wondering, can you explain to me what the coaching looks like? Is that coaching being done by both you two, or is there like a coach I think you said there was a coach at every school. Is that one coach per curriculum for each school?
One coach per school. So it's a good question. So we meet with all the coaches on a regular basis. So about once every couple of weeks. And so we do coaching, but we're not coaching the teachers. We're coaching the coaches, really. And then the coaches are the ones that are facilitating that planning. So the grade level teams will meet and like internalize the lesson plans or the units. So they'll do the planning together, and the coaches will be the ones that set the agenda and facilitate those meetings. And then they're also not exclusively, but they are the ones that are doing most of the observation and feedback for teachers. So giving them that feedback, and then also running the professional development alongside their principals. And they're running the data meetings. So they're preparing the data and facilitating those meetings with their teachers. So those are kind of the big things they're really the boots on the ground implementation people, and we're sort of supporting them to do that work with the teachers. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, that does. I'm wondering if they like if you've also been getting data from them in terms of if their support is sufficient for the amount of teachers that are on the ground. Is that, or do they need more resources?
I think at this point, so I'll just speak for the elementary school because it's different than the high school. We still have math specialists at the elementary school. And so a portion of their job is also to support teachers around math implementation and math instruction. And so, but a big part of their job is also to do math interventions. So what's great is that there's still that person there that kind of holds that math work. And whereas the instructional coaches can really focus on the literacy. So it does feel like we're very lucky to have, I think, to those two people, because I think it's, first of all, there's only so many periods in the week when a teacher wants to meet with somebody besides their colleagues, right? Because they have a lot to do. And so I think the structure that we have right now is they have given me the feedback that that's working for them in terms of the support that they're giving teachers. Because the math person is kind of supporting the math side of things. Sorry, that was long-winded, but I think that.
No, that's good. It's good to get the scope of everything. I think Mickey asked most of my questions, so I'll go to Sarah.
Thank you so much. Just a couple of questions. Jesse, I was really glad to hear you talk about because I've heard from several educators as well that this curriculum is too hard for our kids. And I think it was really, and I'm so excited to know that you're doing a professional development around that as well. So thank you for addressing that. I have a couple of a request for the next time we meet is if we can include past data, because some of this was being implemented before we started the strategic plan. So with CKLA and EL, there were spots, right, across the district that was happening. So if we can just like put this data into that context about, because I'm so glad to hear that CKLA is now 100% across the board, which is great. But I just think, especially with new board members coming on, it will be helpful in kind of seeing the path. And then also when we get to start to see those results at the halftime, halftime. I know we're not in a football game, but sometimes it feels like it. That would just be great. So that is my request. And then my two questions are, has it been easy to find the time to do the professional development? Are you getting any resistance about finding the time for this professional development and focusing on it? And then I'm just curious if you're seeing any trade-offs, either good or bad, or just any trade-offs that are happening because of the focus around these two curriculum.
So the first one was about pushback around PD. I will say that we did build a PD plan last spring that had these sort of placeholders. So specifically, we have like a whole district PD after each one of our walkthroughs. And the idea is that we collect data, we reflect on it, and then we have time built into our PD schedule. This is for elementary, where we can all come together and learn something new based on the data we have. There's also an expectation, I think, we talked about this last year, that teachers just haven't had enough planning time. And so at the elementary level in particular. And so we built in something that we called facilitated planning on Wednesdays, where, or collaborative planning, or sort of planning where you all come together. And so what the idea there is that you start the meeting with like a little nugget of like what you're going to learn about your curriculum. So, we're going to talk about pacing today, or we're going to talk about scaffolds today. That was one that we did recently. And then teachers have time to plan. So it's like, I think it's the best kind of professional development. It's like embedded in the work that teachers are going to do the next day. It feels really relevant to them. It feels like, oh, I can actually use what you just taught me how to do in my planning that I'm going to do tomorrow. So those I think are super effective too. And those are like built into all the school plans as well. So I'm feeling good about the PD plan in general. We haven't gotten a lot of pushback on that. What's the other question, Sarah?
What are the opportunity costs? What PD is maybe not?
Oh, yes. I don't see any, but I also really believe in this work. And I think that it's like the highest leverage thing that we could be doing. I'm like, it's really exciting to be, I mean, it is our equity work. It is our literacy work. In many ways, it's our math work, right? Because kids are learning how to read, so they'll be able to read math problems. Our math curriculum is very language heavy for good reason. It's our multilingual language work. It's our, special ed work. I do think it's really what we should be focused on right now.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Allison.
No, you stick with elementary for a second, then we'll move.
Okay. I just wanted to say, I think while I like Jessie is spot on with what she says, and I think it makes sense as a focus, I'll just tell you some of the things that I think we hear with keeping this as a priority is that schools don't have as much choice or as much freedom around PD that they feel like they need in their own particular communities. And so I think that is something that we are hearing. I think that's kind of, I can understand in some cases how they would feel that way. And there is power in the ability for us to like work together as a district and keep the focus on this. So, but that's one thing that I would say.
Yeah, for the middle schools, I would answer in a way that I think will also get a little bit at Nilat's question, which is, first of all, our instructional coaches are canaries in the coal mine for sure. They're the first ones to know if like a structure is impeding progress and stuff. So our one-on-ones with them are wicked valuable in terms of understanding all of this. At the middle school, 2 of our 3 coaches are new this year in their role and working with relatively new principals who've been there for 1 year or less than 3 years. So in terms of PD, I agree with Jessie. We built this in as a big rock, and I would say that our principals have been wicked supportive of culture and instruction as the 2 super levers of moving school improvement. And so the mindsets are a strength for us, like they're there. But we are, I mentioned the newness just to say we are encountering mostly like logistical business things like conferences and this and that that are clogging up the time. And so we're working with teams to find places for efficiency, et cetera. But no, in terms of like the opportunity cost of this PD, I'm also on team instruction. And I think that for too long, we haven't centered really moving academic. And the result is that historically underserved communities are graduating without meeting grade level standards. So I think it's really critical, and I'm really appreciative of our principals who are centering it.
Really appreciate all of those updates. Thank you. Oh, and can we just make sure that this PowerPoint gets onto board docs so we can reference it later? Thank you.
I was just going to ask that. Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Does anybody have any more thoughts? Yusra, go ahead. And so sorry, we didn't give you the time.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Okay. No, it's okay. We did it in the beginning. So do you want to introduce yourself before you ask your question?
Yes. Hi, my name is Yusra Ali. I'm an L-Large board member. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate that there is something built in for students who are going to have a hard time with the curriculum. And I just wanted to ask, is there any other resources for students who will be struggling even more with this built-in room for, I guess, not struggling in a bad way, but working with the material?
I'll start with our sort of youngest learners. So yes, now that we have a curriculum, like a core curriculum in place, we're sort of beginning to think about, well, not beginning, we're implementing tier 2 and tier 3 support. So that's, first of all, we've trained 2 to 3 teachers at every school in Orton Gillingham, which is for those of you who don't know, it's a research-based program that supports kids that struggle with reading, and it's pretty intensive. And so we have interventionists that are supporting those students, and we have the training and the materials to support the interventionists to use those. We also have time in our day to support students. So students that need extra time, there's a flex block. And so whether it's an ESOL teacher or a special ed teacher or an interventionist or the classroom teacher, there's time to support kids in the skills that they need. And then we also, there's students at the upper levels grade 3, 4, and 5. And some teachers are using CKLA, which we talked about as the K through 2 curriculum with those upper level kids because they need support with like basic decoding. So there's lots of ways that schools are meeting the needs of kids that are struggling. Great question. Thank you for that.
That sounds amazing. Thank you. I don't think this question might not make sense, but I'll try. So when students leave ESOL and transition to mainstream classes, is there a way for the data to show how they are adjusting to the new, I guess, curriculum or material they're learning, so that that can inform what can be worked on in the ESOL classes? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. We want more. I'll start with that. So it's not, I don't feel satisfied with it, but first of all, the EL curriculum has built-in ML supports. And so that Jesse was a little bit alluding to that earlier. And we'll talk to teachers about leaning into the language and the study of language rather than skipping it in order to make it easier. So of course, if you strip down certain content and make the concept simpler, then more people in the room are going to understand multilingual or not multilingual. But all of those students, again, multilingual and non, actually need to go through the struggle of actually managing the text. So that's a mindset shift we're working on with all of our staff. But in terms of tracking their progress, there's there are assessments all the way throughout this, and those teacher collaboration meetings are meant to be reviewing that. The access data, you may know, is once a year, and we get it very late, and so we need to be having much more frequent check-ins around language. And to Jesse showed the mission measures earlier. We're really serious about shrinking the gap between our non-multilingual learners and our multilingual learners, so that we're disaggregating that data along the way.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? Sarah, is that it for our agenda? That was most of the presentations we're supposed to have, yeah.
Yes, that's all we have for today.
Okay, well, I am happy to adjourn early if that's what we are allowed today. Oh, go ahead, Sarah Lenz.
I was just going to acknowledge that this is your last meeting, right?
Really?
As chair of this committee.
Oh,
That's what I want to say too. That's what I want to do too.
Yeah. So I just wanted to thank you, Nialette, because we have gotten through a tremendous amount in this committee in the last year. And so I just wanted to thank you for stewarding this ship over the last year. Really appreciate all you've done.
And thank you for your leadership. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys for helping me every step of the way. I know it was not, I was struggling there in the beginning, but I really appreciate all of you, especially Sarah Warren. Thank you so much for all the time you've taken to get us through all this work, and also text messaging me to make sure that I am on point with some of the things that I need to do. So thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you to your team. We as board members appreciate everything you all do and just all the work you put into, these beautiful presentations. I know you probably don't get it every day, but they are beautifully done. They're so accessible, and I am always happy just to be able to to have so much access to the information that you guys bring to us. So thank you for your work, and thank you for allowing me to lead this space. It has been great, and I'm definitely going to miss it. I might show up, so don't, don't think I'm gone too far. I might come to a meeting. Well, okay. This has been great. It's been a great year. I know we had some transitions, but I'm glad we're all here and doing well. And I wish you guys luck for the next year. Good luck on all the things you need to do. Okay, well, can I get a wow, see? Can I get a
The motion to
wait,
adjourn.
a motion? Oh my goodness. See, I don't understand this English. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting, please?
I move your last motion. Yes, I do move it.
Okay, thank you. Second by Yusra. We everybody fist to five. I can't speak right now. Okay, thank you. We are adjourned at the policy and curriculum meeting is adjourned at 5:56 on Tuesday, November 12th. Thank you, everyone.